When you stop chasing and avoiding, what they feel will show. You have to understand something fundamental about human nature, about the nature of relationships themselves. People engage in patterns of behavior that are deeply ingrained in their psyche, often formed in childhood, molded by experience, reinforced by years of interaction with the world. And avoidance, this tendency to flee from closeness, from commitment, from genuine emotional intimacy, is no exception. It's not merely a choice, it's a psychological defense mechanism. It's a shield erected to protect oneself from perceived threats, from engulfment, from the pain of potential rejection. And yet here you are, chasing, running after someone who keeps pulling away. Why? Because you believe deep down that if you just try harder, if you just love more, if you just prove yourself enough, they'll finally turn around, they'll finally see you, they'll finally stay, and so you pursue. And what does that do? It feeds their avoidance. It confirms their fear. It reinforces the very behavior that's hurting you both. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you step back, when you reclaim your dignity, when you refuse to participate in the dance of pursuit and withdrawal? That's when the real transformation begins. That's when you see something that will truly shock you. Because here's the truth. When you stop chasing, the avoidant is forced to confront something they have spent their entire life running from: themselves. They are no longer given the luxury of distraction, no longer able to blame the pressure of your pursuit for their discomfort, no longer able to justify their withdrawal as a necessary defense. Instead, they're left alone with their thoughts, with their fears, with the raw and unfiltered truth of their own emotions. And for many, that is absolutely terrifying. You see, avoidance isn't a mark of strength. It's a symptom of unresolved wounds. It's a sign of someone who has learned somewhere along the way that closeness equals danger. Maybe they grew up in a household where love was conditional, where vulnerability was punished, where emotional needs were dismissed. Maybe they loved someone once and were shattered by betrayal. Whatever the reason, they've trained themselves to believe that the safest way to exist is at a distance. And as long as you are there, as long as you are chasing, they don't have to face that. They can continue the cycle, continue withdrawing, continue justifying their detachment. But the moment you stop, the moment you walk away, they are left standing at the edge of a precipice they never wanted to acknowledge. And that's when something profound happens. Some avoidants will experience an initial sense of relief. They'll tell themselves, good, now I have space. Now I can breathe. But then, slowly, insidiously, that relief starts to turn into something else. A nagging discomfort, a strange sense of loss, an unease that they can't quite put into words. And that's because, whether they admit it or not, your presence was stabilizing them. Your pursuit, while frustrating, was also proof of something they secretly craved but couldn't admit: connection. The avoidant fears closeness, but they also fear abandonment. They crave intimacy, but they are terrified of it. They want to be loved, but they don't know how to receive love without feeling trapped. And now, for the first time, they're left to wrestle with that contradiction alone. Some will try to distract themselves. They'll bury themselves in work, in hobbies, in fleeting social interactions. But distraction is just a temporary salve. The silence you've left behind will creep in. The absence of your presence will be felt. And they'll begin to realize something shocking. They miss you. Not in the way they've missed others before, not in the way they've conveniently placed people on a shelf only to return when it was convenient. No, this time it's different. Because this time they're confronted with the reality that you were willing to walk away. And that is a game changer. Because when you stop chasing, you shift the dynamic. You are no longer the pursuer, and they are no longer the one being pursued. Instead, they are left with a choice: to continue their pattern and risk losing something meaningful, or to face themselves and do the work necessary to heal. And make no mistake, Many will continue to run. Many will retreat even further into avoidance, telling themselves that this is just proof that relationships aren't worth it. But some will wake up. Some will realize for the first time that they don't want to run anymore, that the pain of losing you is greater than the fear of closeness, that avoidance is not freedom but imprisonment, and those are the ones who will grow. Those are the ones who will seek understanding, who will learn to communicate, who will take responsibility for their own emotional health. But here's the crucial part. You cannot force this realization. You cannot make them see what they are not ready to see. And that's why stopping the chase is so important. Not as a manipulation tactic, not as a strategy to make them come back, but as an act of self-respect, as an acknowledgement that you are worthy of more than one-sided effort, as a declaration that you will not participate in a relationship that drains you, that leaves you anxious, that forces you to beg for the bare minimum. And that's where your own growth comes in. Because when you stop chasing, you're not just changing their experience, you're changing yours. You are learning that your worth is not determined by someone else's willingness to stay. You are realizing that love is not something you should have to earn through persistence. You are stepping into a version of yourself that values reciprocity, that expects emotional maturity, that understands that the right person, the person truly capable of loving you, will not require you to chase them at all. So let them feel the loss. Let them experience the consequences of their avoidance. Let them sit with their own discomfort. And most importantly, let yourself move forward. Because the most powerful thing you can do, the thing that will truly shock them, it's not just stopping the chase, it's thriving without them.